Could the split between the Power Five or now Power Four conferences and the Group of Five conferences happen even sooner than we think? Is the NCAA actually on board with this move? And where does NIL come into play? And could we be seeing the end of NIL collectives? We're going to talk about all of that right after this word from my sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out this shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we're talking about the breaking news that came out today from both Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports and Nicole Auerbach at the Athletic about a new proposal from NCAA Commissioner Charlie Baker. That's right, folks. The NCAA is actually proposing a split. Now, they didn't specify Power Four and Group of Five, but we kind of know that's what they're talking about. So the NCAA brings in a new president. I think it's his title, president, to replace Mark Emmert, who most people think did a terrible job. Let's be honest. They bring in Charlie Baker, who's a former congressman, I think, or something. He was in Washington, D.C. as an elected official. He comes in to take over the NCAA. And he looks at the landscape and he sees the writing on the wall that the power conferences are eventually going to break away from the Group of Five because they have a lot more resources at their disposal. And he sees the writing on the wall that, hey, when you have schools with a lot more resources than the other schools and they're trying to compete at the same level, that's a model that's not sustainable. So instead of letting that happen on its own, where the NCAA no more has any governing authority over these power conferences, they decide, hey, let's propose our own breakaway, starting a brand new subdivision within the FBS for these, quote, power conferences, these power schools, where they can have even more autonomy, do their own thing, even pay their athletes directly. So that way, the NCAA continues to be the governing body over them, and they can continue to make revenue from them in postseason events. That might be a critical piece to this. But I'm going to share an article with you by Nicole Auerbach. Now, I chose Nicole's article because hers is much shorter, and she does a really good job of being concise and getting right to the point here. She even breaks it down into bullet points. So instead of me breaking it down into bullets myself, I chose to read you Nicole's article because she kind of did it for me. But let's look at the article real quick. NCAA proposes creation of new subdivision with direct compensation for athletes. Now, once I read this article to you, I'll give you my thoughts on the whole thing. But it says NCAA President Charlie Baker on Tuesday proposed the creation of a new subdivision within Division I that would allow the highest resource schools the ability to compensate athletes directly through a trust fund and direct name, image, and likeness payments. The groundbreaking proposal was sent out to Division I members and obtained by The Athletic on Tuesday morning, and it included the following recommendations. The formation of a new subdivision made up of institutions with the highest resources that can directly compensate athletes through an enhanced educational trust fund, which requires the schools that opt into it an investment of at least $30,000 per year per athlete for at least half of the school's eligible athletes. Schools would have to adhere to Title IX, providing equal monetary opportunities to both female and male athletes. Now, what I want to do there is kind of break that down and give you an idea of how that works. I know that because that's a lot there. Just using a school like West Virginia, who's my team, for example. West Virginia has about 500 student athletes. I'm using a round number for simplicity here. They have about 500 student athletes at West Virginia University, okay? At least half of those, so 250 of those athletes, would receive $30,000 a year in a trust fund for them, per year, which is so each athlete would get about $120,000 throughout a 4-year stint at West Virginia. But if you break it down per year, it's $30,000 per year per athlete for 250 athletes. That's about $7.5 million per year West Virginia would have to spend on this trust fund for their student athletes. That's a lot of money for a school like West Virginia. That's a lot of money for a school probably like a Virginia Tech or a Kansas State or an Iowa State or an NC State. The ACC and Big 12 schools, could they afford to do this? And also the Title IX implications here. They've got to make sure that female athletes get at least half of that money. And I have no issue with that. That's totally fair. Okay. Now, let's keep going with the article. Schools in the new subdivision could create their own rules separate from the rest of D1, and those rules would allow them the ability to address policies such as scholarship limits and roster size, as well as transfers and NIL. So basically, there's no limit, or at least this new subdivision with the power schools would have the autonomy to create their own rules. Now, I'm assuming all the schools within that division would have to operate under the same rules. Now, another thing, which I didn't mention yet, is schools do not have to do this. They could choose not to opt in. So let's say a school like West Virginia, I think West Virginia would probably opt in. That's just my opinion, but they could choose not to. But let's say there are schools out there who don't want to do this. They don't want to be part of this new college athletics landscape. They don't want to pay this trust fund for their student athletes. A, because they don't want to, or B, there may be some who can't afford it. They could choose to be in the lower level, the lower division. Here's the third bullet point. Any Division I school would be able to enter into an NIL deal with its athletes directly, which is not currently permissible. So schools could pay their student athletes NIL money. It wouldn't come through a collective. So does that mean collectives would die off at that point? I don't know that that's the case, because students would still be allowed to go out here and get their own NIL deals as well. So maybe the collectives could still come into play there. But it'll be interesting to see, would that kill collectives off? I think what this is trying to do, it would give the NCAA maybe more authority over governing NIL and more authority over, putting guardrails up to help control the NIL and stop all this pay-for-play garbage that's going on right now in college football, all the tampering that we're seeing, we're hearing about. Maybe if the NCAA, maybe they feel like if the schools can control it better, then it'll be easier to manage it. And I actually agree with that. I actually think this is the best way to go. I like this move. Let's keep going. The last bullet, any Division I school would be able to distribute to any athlete funding related to educational benefits without any caps on such compensation. So there's no caps. No caps on compensation for student athletes. No caps on scholarships potentially. Now, to me, well, let's finish the article and then I'll give you my thoughts. It says, these recommendations from Baker come amid mounting pressure to allow schools to directly compensate their athletes, and as the NCAA is facing significant legal challenges to its model. In the letter to D1 members, Baker calls his proposal a, quote, forward-looking framework that gives the educational institutions with the most visibility, the most financial resources, and the biggest brands an opportunity to choose to operate with a different set of rules that more accurately reflect their scale and their operating model. Now, I think that's great. I think that is absolutely a home run move for Charlie Baker to try to get ahead of this thing and try to incorporate this so that the NCAA, now look, we all know the NCAA is not consistent with the way they manage things. We know that they screw up a lot. They've made a lot of dumb decisions over the years. But I still think doing it this way is better than what we see now with this free-for-all that's out there, where schools and boosters basically, or let's say boosters, are going around and just paying players whatever they want, whatever they can. Pay for plays going on, tampering's going on, like I mentioned earlier. Maybe this helps control that. It's not going to go away completely. You're always going to have people who don't play by the rules. That's always been happening in college sports. It's always going to happen. But at least this way, maybe they could manage it better. They could govern it better. They could control it a little more and put some guardrails around it. And I think that's a great thing. Now, would that be far enough for student athletes to be satisfied? I don't know. But what I do know is this. You're still going to have your haves and your have-nots even in this new division. because the Michigans of the world, the Ohio States of the world, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Texas A&Ms, basically your Big Ten and your SEC schools are still going to have a major advantage over the Big 12 and the ACC in this model, because at the end of the day, they're still going to be making $30 to $40 million a year more in revenue, TV revenue, maybe $50 million in some cases more. So if you're a 5-star recruit or a 4-star recruit, even for that matter, and you can go to Michigan where you can make an uncapped amount of NIL money, an uncapped amount of scholarship money, plus you get this $30,000 a year in your trust fund, or you can go to West Virginia or Iowa State or Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech, where you're only going to make about half of the scholarship money, about half of the NIL money. Now, you may still get the $30,000 a year, but your NIL and your scholarship money is going to be capped. I don't see how that fixes that problem. I think that problem is always still going to exist. And does it even cause the quote have-nots of the Power Five? Do they opt into this model? Do they decide, hey, you know what? We're not going to opt into this new model. We're going to stay back away from this. We're going to let the Big Ten and the SEC be the new power conferences. Let them do this. And we're going to sit back here and be part of this lower level division, like maybe with even the group of 5 schools, because we don't want to have to pay out this $30,000 a year trust fund. It'll be interesting to see how many Power 5 schools, if this happens. Look, this is not being voted on right now. This is only a proposal at this point. But I think it'll gain traction, because I've heard coaches talk about how they think the schools need to be involved in this, direct payments. I've even heard Neil Brown talk about how he thinks there needs to be a revenue sharing model with the players. I think it's coming. And I think the NCAA being involved is the right way to go. But we're still going to see a separation between haves and have-nots, schools with a lot more resources than the others. I don't think there's any way around that, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting. To see how many of these Power 5 schools, if this goes forward, how many of them actually opt out of being part of this new FBS subdivision. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section, Couz's Corner family. Let me know what you think about this new proposal that Charlie Baker at the NCAA has come up with. Also, guys, there's a great way you can support my channel right now that will help me keep the lights on here at Couz's Corner. It's also a way you can support your favorite student athletes, and that's by buying On It NIL trading cards. These are great stocking stuffers for anyone in your family who likes trading cards, and 60% of the profits go to the student athletes. West Virginia Mountaineer players are available. There are cards right now you can get for West Virginia with West Virginia Mountaineer athletes on them, West Virginia football players specifically. Go check out onatathlete.com. There is a link in my description box. If you click that link to get into the website, anything you buy, I will get a small commission from the sale. So you will not only be supporting your favorite student athletes, you'll be supporting me as well and helping me keep the lights on here at Couz's Corner. And like I said, it's a great stocking stuffer gift for Christmas. If in order to get it in for Christmas, you need to get your order in right away. Also, guys, I want to give a shout out to my new VIP members here at Couz's Corner: Ronnie Johansson, Cole D, Old Golden Blue, Jay McClanahan, Hunter Guy 558, and Big E 7375. Thank you all for joining, or in some cases rejoining, Couz's Corner as a VIP member. Also, guys, I have a website. I don't advertise this enough. It's called Couz'sCorner.com. There are some great blog articles over there about West Virginia Mountaineer sports. It's also a place where you can find some of my videos and my audio-only podcasts all in one place. Go check out Couz'sCorner.com. It's another way you can help me out. It's also a way you can get in touch with me. You can send me a message through my website there if you want to chat. Last but not least, guys, you can support me absolutely free. Hit the thumbs up button. That's the first way you can do it. The comment that I mentioned, leave that comment below. That's another way you can do it. Share it with your family and friends. And last but not least, subscribe. My subscription numbers have they're still going up, but they're not going up at the rate they used to. So help that change, guys. If you haven't subscribed to Couz's Corner, what are you waiting for? I cover West Virginia Mountaineer football. I cover conference realignment a lot. I cover college football news like I'm doing here, and I do cover some Big 12 storylines as well about other teams. So if you like any of that stuff, please subscribe to my channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified of future uploads and future live streams. And with that being said, guys, I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Couz's Corner. I hope you have a top shelf day. And don't forget to cue country roads.